They gave me the smallest chair. I know that sounds like a strange way to begin, but if you want to understand what happened at the Galactic Concord Summit in the year 2347, you need to understand the chair. It sat at the far end of a curved obsidian table inside the Hall of Admirals, aboard a space station called the Anthem of Silence. Every other seat was tall, polished, built to match the species that sat in it. Mine was short, plain, and deliberately placed lower than the rest. A small insult. A quiet message. You are less than us. My name is Commander Aidan Mercer, and for 6 years I had been Earth's sole military representative at this annual summit. 6 years of sitting in that chair. 6 years of listening to 5 alien admirals discuss the future of the galaxy, as if humanity were a footnote in a book they had already finished writing. I never complained. Not once. And that was the point. The first admiral to arrive that morning was Grand Admiral Thexoran of the Valkyrie Swarm Collective. He was 7 feet tall, covered in shimmering green chitin, with compound eyes that reflected the light like broken emeralds. His species commanded 12,000 warships. Each one carried millions of drone soldiers inside its hull like a living hive. Thexoran moved with the precise, clicking grace of an insect that had never once doubted its place at the top of the food chain. Behind him came High Admiral Cirith of the Draeloni Sovereignty. Reptilian, ancient. Her civilization had been building starships while humanity was still figuring out how to make fire. She wore robes embroidered with mathematical proofs instead of patterns, and she looked at me the way a professor looks at a student who wandered into the wrong classroom. Lord Admiral Kelvon of the Torvathi Dominion entered next, sealed inside an environmental suit filled with pressurized salt water. His tentacles glowed with soft bioluminescence behind the glass of his helmet. He could regrow a lost limb in a matter of days. Humans, as he loved to remind everyone, could not. Then came Archon Admiral Jolly of the Netheri Dominion. She was not made of flesh at all. She was pure energy, contained within a crystalline frame that floated above her chair rather than sitting in it. To her, biological life was a curiosity. Interesting, perhaps, the way bacteria might be interesting under a microscope. And finally, Warlord Admiral Gorath of the Crolian Hegemony, 9 feet tall, 4 arms. A body built from silicon-calcium bones wrapped in dense muscle. His people had conquered 11 species before joining the Concord. He did not sit down. He stood at the head of the table, looked at each admiral in turn, and then looked at me. That was when the laughter began. Thexoran started it. He projected a holographic display above the table showing fleet comparisons. The Valkyrie bar stretched across the entire display. Earth's bar was a tiny sliver at the bottom, barely visible. He clicked his mandibles in amusement. The humans field a navy the way a child floats toys in a bathtub, he said. The translator rendered it perfectly, and the room responded with low, rumbling chuckles. Cirith added her voice next. She pulled up Earth's technology patents filed with the Concord, and waved a clawed hand dismissively. They have invented nothing original, she said. Every design is borrowed from Concord species and reassembled with minor adjustments. They are clever mimics. So are carrion birds. Kelvan joined in with a biological comparison chart. Human fragility laid bare in numbers. Our bones break under pressures that a Torvathi would not even notice. Our skin tears. We cannot survive in vacuum for more than a few moments. Their soldiers stop functioning if the temperature shifts too far in either direction, he said, his voice bubbling through his suit's speakers. How can they expect to hold a star system? Jali did not laugh. She never laughed, but her words were perhaps the most cutting of all. We do not mock them, she said, her crystalline frame pulsing with soft light. One does not mock the weather. One simply accounts for it and moves on. She referred to our species as the meat, not with cruelty, with taxonomy. And then Gorath moved. He walked the length of the table, each step heavy enough to vibrate the floor beneath my feet. He stopped beside my chair and looked down at me. Stand, he said. I stood. He placed one massive finger on my shoulder and pushed. Not hard, just enough to send me stumbling backward a single step. He looked at the other admirals and spread all 4 arms wide. This is the species that wants a seat among warriors? The room filled with laughter, real laughter. The kind that rolls through a space and settles into your bones. Even the diplomatic aides behind the observation gallery joined in. I straightened my uniform. I sat back down. I let the laughter wash over me like rain against a window, and when it faded, I spoke. "You are right," I said. "On every count. We are small. We are fragile. We are young. I will not argue with facts." I paused, but I would like to revisit this conversation in about 3 hours. There was a brief silence, then Sirith made a dismissive sound, and the summit moved on to its official agenda. No one took my words seriously. I did not expect them to. The alarm came 94 minutes later. The station's perimeter sensor arrays erupted with warnings. Every display in the hall turned red. A massive fleet had dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 9,000 vessels, angular and black, moving in fractal patterns that shifted like a living thing. The Harrowkind. Every admiral knew that name. The Harrowkind were an ancient machine swarm, remnants of a war so old that no living species remembered who built them. They awoke every few centuries, consumed entire star systems for raw material, and then went dormant again. The Concorde scientists had predicted they would sleep for another 80 years. The scientists were wrong. Panic is an interesting thing to watch in species that consider themselves superior. Thexoran immediately contacted his swarm fleet. Nearest elements were 14 hours away. Sirath reached the Draeloni sovereignty. 22 hours. Kelvon had a patrol group 6 hours out, but only 40 ships. Jolly offered to project a disruption wave, but admitted it would delay the swarm by minutes at best. Gorath slammed the table hard enough to crack it. His rapid response fleet was 18 hours away. The math was simple. 9,000 Harrowkind vessels would reach the station in approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes. No Concorde fleet could arrive in time. The station had shields but no meaningful weapons. 300,000 people lived aboard. I sat quietly. I checked my wrist console. I typed 3 words into a coded channel and sent the transmission. Gorath noticed my calm first. He pointed at me with one of his 4 arms. "The human has gone still with fear," he said. "Even his courage is small." "I am not afraid," I said. "I have already sent for help." Sirath actually laughed. "Your nearest naval base is over 30 hours away at human FTL speeds. We have mapped every one of your shipyards, Commander. We know your drive capabilities to the decimal point." I looked at her. "Your intelligence is accurate," I said, "based on what we have shown you." The room went quiet. Truly quiet. The kind of quiet that lives in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Sirith opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The next 90 minutes were chaos for everyone except me. Evacuation plans were drawn up. The station's shuttles could save perhaps 40,000 of the 300,000 aboard. Arguments broke out over priority. My small human staff of 12 worked calmly and efficiently, organizing civilian groups, managing shuttle rotations, and solving problems without being asked. Nobody thanked them. They did not need thanks. They needed purpose, and they had it. On the main display, the Harrowkind swarm crossed the outer sensor threshold. Thousands of black shapes against the stars, moving in perfect, silent coordination. 40 minutes to contact. My console pinged. I read the message. I allowed myself one slow breath. I stood. "Admirals," I said. "I recommend you direct your sensors to grid reference 77 Sigma 4, approximately 200,000 kilometers off the station's starboard side." The sensors pivoted. What they showed was something none of them had ever seen before. FTL signatures were appearing, but not the slow, shimmering warp bubbles that Concorde species used. These were hard, sharp tears in the fabric of space itself, opening and closing in rapid succession like a drumbeat. And through those tears, ships poured out. Not dozens, not hundreds. 3,400 warships of the United Earth Navy dropped into normal space in a synchronized cascade that lasted 11 seconds. They filled the sensor display like stars being born, angular, armored, covered in layered plating and weapon arrays. No elegance, no decorative flourishes. They were built to do one thing, and every line of their design made that purpose clear. At the center of the formation sat the UEN Thermopylae, a dreadnought-class flagship 4 kilometers long. My commanding officer, Fleet Admiral Rena Okafor, was aboard. I watched the admirals' faces. Thexoran's compound eyes cycled through colors I had never seen before, some of which I suspect had no name in any human language. Sirath's jaw fell open. Kelvon's bioluminescence flickered wildly. Zali's crystalline frame pulsed with light so bright it cast shadows across the room. And Gorath sat down. The warlord admiral of the Krullian hegemony, who had never once taken a seat in my presence, because standing over me was the point, sat down. I could see the understanding spreading across the room like sunrise. Our nearest base was 30 hours away, at the FTL speeds we had reported to the Concorde. This fleet arrived in under 2 hours. We had been understating our drive capabilities by a factor of 15. For decades, Concorde Intelligence estimated Earth's total navy at 600 to 800 ships. This single response force was 3,400, which meant the real size of our fleet was something none of them had ever imagined. And the fleet was not waiting for instructions. Within 90 seconds of arrival, every ship was already moving in attack formation toward the Harrowkind swarm. They had come ready. They had come expecting this. Cirith whispered something in the Drayaloni language. I had studied it for years, she said. They were not imitating us. They were studying us. The engagement lasted 1 hour and 43 minutes. I will not describe the details of the battle. I will tell you what I saw on the faces of the admirals who watched it. I saw Thexoran begin recording every tactical maneuver, his compound eyes tracking dozens of engagements simultaneously, and I saw him realize that his entire swarm doctrine had no answer for the way human ships fought, breaking into small, independent groups that adapted in real time without waiting for centralized orders. I saw Sirath watch our weapons technology in action, and understand that everything we had shared with the Concorde was the version we were willing to let them see. The real systems were something else entirely. I saw Kelvon notice that when a human ship was critically damaged, the crew would evacuate in escape pods and let the onboard systems pilot the empty vessel directly into the largest enemy target it could reach. He asked me if the artificial intelligences were forced to do this. I told him they volunteered. He did not speak again for a long time. I saw Zali, an energy being who processed information at the speed of light, attempt to scan our fleet's communication frequencies and fail completely. She could not even begin to understand our encryption. She looked at me the way someone looks at a locked door they had always assumed was open, and I saw Gorath watch a crippled human destroyer hold its position in the path of an incoming Harrowkind assault wave to buy time for a civilian transport to reach safety. Every person aboard that destroyer knew what staying meant. They stayed anyway. Gorath stood slowly and pressed his fist against his chest. The Krullian's salute of respect. He had never once offered it to a human. When it was over, the Harrowkind swarm was gone. Not defeated. Erased. Of 9,000 machine vessels, none remained. Our fleet had lost 214 ships, roughly 40,000 people, a number that made my chest tighten even though I had known it was coming. An open-channel broadcast reached the station. 30 seconds of silence from over 3,000 warships. A moment of mourning for the fallen. No words. No ceremony. Just silence that said everything. Even Gorath lowered his head. We returned to the Hall of Admirals. My chair was still the smallest, but the room felt different now, the way a room feels different after a storm has passed and the air is clean. Fleet Admiral Okafor transported aboard and stood behind my chair. She said nothing. She did not need to. I addressed the table. I kept my voice even. 41 years ago, you gave us the smallest chair and told us to be grateful. And we were. We sat down. We listened. We watched you laugh. And while you laughed, we built. Not to prove you wrong, not for revenge, because that is what humans do when you give us time. We use it. I looked at each of them in turn. Today, 40,000 of my people gave their lives to protect this station. They did not do it for a bigger chair. They did it because 300,000 people needed help, and we were close enough to answer. That is who we are. That has always been who we are. The silence that followed was the most respectful sound I had ever heard. Thexoran transmitted a formal request to his government to reclassify humanity as a strategic parity civilization. Cirith stood and performed the Drayaloni gesture of intellectual acknowledgement. In 200,000 years of recorded history, she had never offered it to a species younger than 50 millennia. Kelvon formally requested a joint naval exercise program. He wanted to learn from us. Zahali pulsed softly and said, "We will need to update our definitions." From her, that was the highest compliment a biological species had ever received. Gorath walked to my chair. He gripped it with 2 of his 4 hands and lifted it. For a moment I thought he might break it. Instead, he raised it, carefully, precisely. until it sat at exactly the same height as every other seat at the table. He set it down, looked me in the eye, and spoke the first words of genuine respect a Krullian warlord had ever offered a human. "Sit, warrior." I sat. The chair was the right height. Through the observation window behind me, the battered, unbroken silhouettes of 3,000 human warships held formation against the stars. They asked for nothing. They waited for no applause. They simply held the line, as they always had, as they always would. They gave us 41 years in the smallest chair. They thought they were keeping us down. They were giving us time, and we used every single second.